Hi, I'm Rev Myron. I'm a minister with Pathways of Light, and I've been a Course in Miracles student for over 40 years. I'm going through the text this year again, asking Jesus for clarity, and then I write from that clarity, and that's what I'm sharing with you today. So let's get started. We're reading from A Course in Miracles, Chapter 10, Section 1, At Home in God. And we're going to read the first two paragraphs today. Paragraph 1 says, you do not know your creations simply because you would decide against them as long as your mind is split. And to attack what you have created is impossible. But remember that it is as impossible for God. The law of creation is that you love your creations as yourself because they're part of you. Everything that was created is therefore perfectly safe because the laws of God protect it by his love. Any part of your mind that does not know this has vanished itself from knowledge because it has not met its conditions. Who could have done this but you? Recognize this gladly, for in this recognition lies the realization that your banishment is not of God and therefore does not exist. That's good news. My ACIM group and I were discussing our creations one day, and as most of us do, we wondered about them. In one section of the course, they're referred to as our extensions. So we decided that since God is love and he created us by extending himself, we are love, and we created by extending ourselves. Our creations must also be love. To be honest, it's hard to relate to this because I don't know what I am really. I can say I am love, but what does that mean? I read in the course that my creations love me and I love them, and this touches something in me and feels true. It makes me want to remember them and return to them. But as long as I'm attached to the illusion I made, which is the opposite of reality in every way, I cannot know my creations because I would reject them as I do all of reality. I don't like to think I reject reality, but it's the only way I could have this experience. So evidently I do. To reject is to attack, and Jesus says it is impossible to attack what I created. This is why I cannot know my creations now. My creations are perfectly safe because they're part of me, and it is impossible for them to be harmed. Just as I cannot harm my creations, God cannot harm me. This alone, if I could completely accept it, would undo guilt in my mind and undo the fear of God, which keeps us bound to this illusory state. It is important for me to know that I but do this to myself. I choose what I believe, and I have chosen a belief that I am banished from God. the, re- the reason it's important to know that I did this to myself is that as long as I think God banished me, I will be reluctant to accept that he loves me. I will remain afraid that I did something unforgivable, and the idea of returning to God will be a fearful thought. The truth is, God could not have banished us, and therefore we are not banished. We only dream of banishment, and it's time to wake up. Paragraph 2 tells us, you're at home in God, dreaming of exile, but perfectly capable of awakening to reality. Is it your decision to do so? You recognize from your own experience that what you see in dreams you think is real while you're asleep. Yet the instant you waken, you realize that everything that seemed to happen in the dream did not happen at all. You do not think this strange, even though all the laws of what you awakened to were violated while you slept? Is it not possible that you merely shifted from one dream to another without really waking? Well, this morning I lay in bed thinking about my dream. I remembered it clearly, but I did not for a moment become confused about it. It was a dream I had while asleep. And while, sure, it seemed real, now I'm not asleep and I know it wasn't real. It was kind of interesting to think about, but I'm not going to believe it actually happened suddenly. How do I know for sure it was real? Well, for one thing, it violated all the laws of the world. In it, gravity was only a suggestion and was easily ignored. I was driving a car and then I was still moving along, but there was no car. I was me, then I was someone else. Jesus is asking me to consider this. What if I didn't really wake up at all? What if I just went from one dream to another? I'm pretty certain now that this is all that's happening. I am dreaming right now as I write this journal. How do I know I'm dreaming even when I tell myself I'm awake? My experience of being awake ignores all the laws of heaven. In this story, I'm separate from my brothers. I'm not perfectly happy. I suffer and die. None of this makes sense in reality, so I must be dreaming. Have you ever experienced lucid dreaming? A lucid dream is any dream in which one is aware that one is dreaming. Several years ago, I had a very bad dream, a terrible nightmare. Since then, I've had that dream try to replay, but when it does, I either wake myself up or I redirect the dream. I say no, and the dream changes. This is an example of lucid dreaming. I've also had a simple awareness that what is happening is a dream. I've told myself in my dream that I'm just dreaming. This is beginning to happen in my waking dream, that state that I call life. I am dreaming the story of Myron and it's becoming a lucid dream. Not all the time, but sometimes. And if it's happening sometimes, I know that it will begin to happen all the time. I encourage that progression as I practice the course. Teaching the lessons is extremely helpful. I seem to have shifted into a sharper clarity, and the lessons are clearer and more meaningful than ever before. Reading a few years back, The End of Death by Nook Sanchez helped greatly. Most recently, reading A Course in Miracles, A Direct Path, has been a real help. Probably the most beneficial thing I've done is work with others as I facilitate courses from Pathways of Life. The Holy Spirit leads me to whatever will help me realize that I'm dreaming and it is time to wake up. Thank you so much for joining me in this reading. I hope that you found it helpful. If you did, then please like it. And if you haven't yet, please subscribe. And I'll be back soon with another reading. See you then.